The Haitian Revolution was dreamed up and carried out by enslaved women and men, most of them African-born survivors of the Middle Passage. They succeeded in freeing themselves and created a new country based on the self-evident truth that no one should be a slave. So, you might be wondering, how did they succeed against all odds? In the late 18th century, French Saint Domingo was the most profitable country in the world. Slave labor produced sugar and coffee for the markets of Europe. The huge profit for planters and merchants depended on daily violence and terror inflicted on the enslaved majority to keep them from rebelling. Some slaves ran away to form maroon communities, while others did what they could to create spaces of sanctuary within the plantation. The French Revolution of 1789 changed things. Political conflict weakened colonial power, and the news reached the island of declarations in Paris about universal human rights. Free people of African descent demanded these rights too, but faced severe resistance from many white planters. Meanwhile, the enslaved watched, listened, and began to plan. At a profound religious ceremony, they gathered together to strategize and gain strength. And then, in a coordinated assault, they rose up in the north of Saint Domingo, burning plantations and cane fields, smashing the sugar works, and killing their masters. A delegation traveled to Paris and explained how the insurgents would protect the colony for France, while white planters were turning to England in a bid to preserve slavery. The National Convention declared slavery abolished throughout the French Empire. But what is freedom? For the formerly enslaved, it meant they have their own land to cultivate for their families and communities. But revolutionary leaders, including Toussaint Louverture, believed Saint Domingo still needed plantations and that former slaves should become wage laborers. They argued the colony needed sugar and coffee to trade for other goods, including the weapons they needed to defend freedom. For they knew there were many enemies of emancipation. When Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power in France, he listened to those who argued emancipation has been a disaster. He sent a massive military mission to Saint Domingo to get rid of Toussaint Louverture and other black leaders due to his distrust in them. But he severely underestimated the determination of the people of the colony to remain free. Thus, a new society in Saint Domingo had been born, and the population was not going to go back. The arrival of the French troops set off a brutal year-long war, but the defenders of liberty ultimately triumphed in late 1803. It was the only successful slave revolution in history, and with the defeat of the French Haiti was born.